Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've got a freaky guitar today. This is known as the SGZ. And this thing is straight out of the late 80s. When I saw this thing come up for sale, I was like, oh, that seller must have the date wrong. There's no way this could be a 1998 guitar. It's just not possible. This screams the end of the Norlin era, the start of the Juskowitz era, when they were just doing a bunch of freaky stuff, and none of it stuck. They were having a bad time, and then the Classic series finally took off, and that kind of saved Gibson there. However, I got it. I looked at the serial number, and sure enough, the seller wasn't lying. This is a late 90s guitar. So that baffled my mind that Gibson actually released something that looked like this in the late 90s. I mean, look at this thing. It screams 80s. And I was certain there was a model that looked exactly like this from that weird period when Gibson was just recently under new ownership. And I wasn't wrong. There was a series of SGs that looked very similar to this called the SG90 series. There was kind of a single version that just had the humbucker pickup, and then they had one that's called the SG90 double, and that just meant it had two pickups. The only major difference between this guitar and that guitar is they didn't have the zigzag body through construction. It just kind of came out similar to like an L6S, and in my opinion, I think this one looks way cooler. But as far as the control layout goes, it was pretty much the exact same guitar. Those were made in 1988 and 89. In 88, they had binding on the neck like this one, but I guess in 89 they decided to do away with that. Another difference is they had a crown on the headstock instead of this sweet Z shape. Now the 90s version came in this color and platinum, which is kind of a silver color. But what is this color called? Is it teal? Is it pelham blue? No, this is called Verdigris. Now there's a lot of controversy out there of how to actually pronounce that. I'm going with the Google pronunciation, Verdigris. Some people think it's Verdigris. Some people think it's pronounced the way it looks, Verdigris. So it just seems nobody can agree of how this thing is pronounced. It's kind of a regional thing. I'll let you guys fight about that in the comment section. But for all intents and purposes, it's kind of a bluish green hue. And it gets that name from copper. When copper ages, it kind of starts turning green, and that's what that is called, verdigris. So if you have an old brass nut and there's some of that greening to it, that's what it's called, verdigris. So I learned something by getting this guitar. So besides this having a fancy finish and just having a weird layout, what is different about this guitar that you can't necessarily see? Well, the first thing, we've got 24 frets here. Most SGs only have 22, so that gives you extra tonal capabilities to this guitar. And if you're a Fender player, you might like this guitar because it's a 25.5-inch scale instead of the usual 24.75 that Gibson does. So if you're a Fender guy and you're looking to get a Gibson, maybe try one of these out. The scale length will be familiar to you, and you can kind of get some single coil sounds out of this thing. Let's clear something up though. This is not a single coil. This is actually a 490R that's stacked on top of each other, and I guess it's wired differently, that way you don't have any hum. So again, this is still a 490R humbucker, and then they decided to put a 500T in the bridge. So you have your standard Gibson pickups, except for this one was stacked on top of each other. Now the original ones of these, I believe they had a coil splitting feature. This one does not. However, you do have the sweet Z on here. The next thing you'll probably notice is, hey, where's the output jack on this thing? Don't most SGs have them on the front? That's true. Is it on the side? Uh-oh, where's our output jack? Oh, there it is. It's inside of the guitar body. That is beautiful. That's one reason why I do like the 80s SGs, is because they have them on the side, but this is the first one that's actually recessed into the body. That's a really neat feature to me. Spec-wise, you have a mahogany body, mahogany neck, and a sweet ebony fretboard with split diamond inlays. I'm not really sure why Gibson released this in the 90s. Maybe they had thought they initially released this guitar a little bit too early, so they thought they would try again. Now I will say stylistically, they did make it look better. I really like that Z emblem on the headstock. As far as I'm aware, that's the only Gibson that has that. And you have this fancy truss rod cover and a fancy looking pickguard. Now this was only offered for 1 year, 1998, and surprise, they didn't sell well, so that kind of makes these collector's items now. But in the late 80s, they also had the Explorer 90 and the V90 in single and double pickups. Some of those guitars also came with the Steinberger tremolo unit. However, it's the normal stop bar ones that I look for, because the V90 is probably one of the coolest guitars out there. It's got the 59 styled body. It usually just has one Bill Lawrence pickup in it, and they're just so fantastic. I would really love one of those in that neon yellow finish. That's a striking guitar right there. Now the Explorer 90, I like freaky stuff, but even that one's a little bit too freaky for me. I would still love to review one, but they basically took the neck joint of a regular Explorer and moved it over a little bit, and then they added a deeper cutaway so you can actually get to all the frets. So as far as a playable instrument, I think they made it better, but it just looks a little bit too freaky. It kind of reminds me of the Futura guitars. So this is kind of a reissue of a late 80s guitar, and I've got to say, it is definitely an interesting piece. Again, 25.5-inch scale, 24 frets, recessed output jack, 2 humbuckers, one stacked on top of itself, and string-through body construction. That gives this guitar really good sustain, and this stacked humbucker can kind of give you some Strat-like tones. Like when you're in the middle, it's a little bit quacky, but it's still very smooth. I would not say that this sounds like a single coil by any means, but it doesn't necessarily sound like your regular humbucker either. So this might not be a guitar for everyone, but they definitely are very visually striking. So if you see one of these at a guitar store, definitely take it down and give it a try. Now that we know a little bit about this guitar, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. Now that we know how this guitar sounds, let's go ahead and look at its condition. This guitar is in really nice shape. We're gonna have to look for things that's wrong with it. You can see you've got a few light scratches on the face of the headstock just from string change wear, but for the most part it is really clean. But let's get a close-up of the Gibson logos. It doesn't look like mother of pearl to me. It's a really strange silvery sparkle material. I'm guessing that was something special just for this guitar. Again, the truss rod cover on these is kind of a weird looking one. It's not what you normally see, but that is original. And the nut on these is originally black. Now along the neck, as with most semi-wet metallic finishes, and honestly just all Gibson finishes, you can see a very small line around the nut, and it kind of runs up along the binding. That's just where the binding ends and the neck truly begins, so that's why you get those little lines that form. It's like that on both sides of the neck. You've got a little bit of wear and tear, but this is definitely normal to see. We have a beautiful ebony fretboard on this one. The frets show very minimal wear, if any at all. It's definitely ready to be played. This was mainly a collector's item. It sat around on a stand for a while in someone's collection as a display piece. Here you can see there's just some light scratches on the finish. Nothing too major. But right here there is a little bit of discoloration to the finish from a guitar stand. But before you see that for the first time, it's just invisible because it's right on the corner, so it's not always visible, but I do want you to know it is there. So overall, the face of the guitar is fairly clean, but again, you have got a few light nicks or dings here or there, some light scratches, and some stand rash. Back of the headstock, our serial number is 9174 8463, made in USA. This guitar has stock black hardware everywhere. These are black Grovers. There are no breaks, cracks, or repairs to this one, and you've got a really slim, flat neck profile here. This is a great guitar for doing like jazzy chords on because the fretboard feels rather flat, and with this nice 60s slim neck profile, it just makes it easier to do your bars. Here's the back of the guitar. Everything is original on this guitar except for the strap buttons. They have been swapped out to Dunlops, but no major nicks or dings or scratches, just some very light wear and tear. The neck joint is good on this one, and again, just very light wear and tear to the sides of this guitar. This was definitely just a collector's piece. There's no stand rash really on the bottom. It's just right on that edge of the guitar. It's kind of weird, but it is there, and I would like you to be aware of it. Since this guitar has been in a display case, it hasn't seen too much sun, so it doesn't glow a lot, but I like the way this pickguard glows. That's a very cool white trim around there. The back of the guitar is also glowing very lightly, the way I would expect to see, as is the neck. And the back of the headstock is also looking good. So this guitar definitely passes the blacklight test. Now, this guitar was sold to me in a gig bag. I think that's very disrespectful for a guitar in this condition. So I had this spare Generation 3 chainsaw case laying around, and I thought, you know, since it looks like it's from the 80s, why not give it to it? This one was originally to an 80s SG Special. And you have a nice blue interior. There's not much wrong with this case. You can see it even has the indentation of an SG, so it doesn't look like it's not the original case. But one thing to go over here is that this foam is not glued down in this area. All you'd have to do is put some super glue down there and then it would stay, but I'm just letting you know that in case you would like to fix that. These areas are also loose. You can peel them up if you want to. However, in regular use that will never affect you, but it might be worth gluing those down too when you get there. Now, since this is a 25.5-inch scale, it's a little bit longer than a normal SG, so you've kind of got to compress this foam up here, but it does still fit just fine. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Gibson SGZ, feel free to contact me on my Facebook page or check out the links in the description. Thank you for watching, Troglodytes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.